To just quickly introduce myself, I'm Amber Alston. I'm the VP of Product at Replicated. And in this talk, I wanted to focus on highlighting all of the new capabilities this past quarter that I think you need to know about, as well as talk about some actively in progress work that will be coming to you soon. This past quarter, we've been really focused on giving you better visibility into what's happening across your customers and more control over how you respond to it. First, we'll walk through the new event notification system, improvements to support bundles and security center, quality of life updates across the platform, and then take a look at what's coming next. Interesting. There we go. Zoom problems. One of the biggest things we've shipped this quarter is the new event notification system, now available in beta. This is a new system for setting up targeted alerts for key events across your customer and application lifecycle. So you pick the right events you care about, you filter them to the right scope, you route them to the right people, and then via email or system webhook. If you're familiar with the classic instance notifications that we've had available for a couple of years, this is the next generation of that. So your existing classic instance notifications will continue to work. So you can continue to use those while you explore this new capability. And I do encourage you to explore the new capability because it's significantly expanded from what was possible in the first generation of notifications that focused just on instances. We now have more than 20 types of event types across the customer, application lifecycle, release lifecycle, etc. And where this new capability gets really powerful is the filtering. So you're not just picking an event type, you can actually scope a notification down to a specific application, customer, channel, license type, or even specific custom license field values, sometimes called custom entitlements. So you could set up a notification that only fires when a paid customer on your stable channel uploads a support bundle, and then you can route that notification directly to the relevant Slack channel for your tier 1 support team. So webhooks were really the key to making this event driven. Jeremy touched on that in his talk. There's built-in integration testing around the webhook so that you can validate that your subscriptions work as expected before you start relying on them. So these 20 plus customer instance and other event types came directly from you all's feedback on that classic instance notifications functionality. We've also added the idea to the instance state around instance ready and instance upgrade completed that let you know when an install or upgrade actually succeeded, not just when it started. So previously you would see telemetry when a new version had been started, an upgrade had been started, but it didn't necessarily mean that the app was fully up and healthy. So now you can instrument the installation and upgrade initiation events, as well as the actual point of app ready status post that install or upgrade. I'm also quite excited about the new custom metrics alerting capabilities as well. So previously our custom metrics alerting was pretty limited. It allowed you to know that the value had changed, but now it's significantly more advanced. You can set custom metrics alerts using various operators that are appropriate for the type of data point that you're doing as your custom metric, and you can define when you want to be notified and how often. So additionally, the instant state duration and flapping events are there to better enable proactive monitoring of customer instances. These alerts can help bring attention to not just unhealthy, but also unstable instances where the pods are blipping a lot. Each of these have configurable thresholds, things like how long does it need to be in unhealthy before you want to be notified? How many times does the instance need to blip in status before you want to be notified? So these improved configurable thresholds, as well as built-in cooldown periods, help you control the potential noise level a lot better than the first generation of instance notifications. So I also want to talk about the customer event visibility that these notifications bring as well. Some examples that Chuck will touch on in his talk as well is previously you could see when a user joined Enterprise Portal in the vendor portal UI, but you couldn't get that information programmatically. And knowing when new invites are sent and new users join the enterprise portal is useful for operational purposes. And particularly that first in-customer access to the enterprise portal is really interesting from a revenue recognition perspective, because that is the first time that in-customer actually has access to your software if you're distributing with the enterprise portal. And under US code ASC 606, software vendors actually need to demonstrate when that performance obligation was satisfied. Different vendors define that moment differently. Some vendors will define it as the first time they were invited to the enterprise portal. Of course, there might be a delay between that invite and acceptance, but it's the point of invite that's the most important to them from revenue recognition. Other vendors will define that as the first time the customer actually logged into the portal, the first time the customer actually had access to the software. Others will define it as the very first time they actually pulled the software. And however you choose to define it from a revenue recognition perspective, all of those data points are now covered with subscribable event notifications, as well as queryable timestamps that you can actually pull back through the vendor API. As I mentioned earlier, Chuck is going to be touching in more detail about how some of these signals can be used in his upcoming talk. And so a quick note before we move on, event notifications is available now in beta, no feature flag, no opt-in. It is rolling out later today. So if you're looking at Vendor Portal at the exact time of this talk, you might not see it yet, but you will see it later today. So for those folks watching this a little bit later, the one thing I want to encourage you to do is to go later today, go to Vendor Portal, go to the new notifications page that's in the global navigation of the Vendor Portal UI, set up your first subscription and see how many potential use cases you can already cover with what's available now in beta. It takes less than 2 minutes to set up a subscription. So with that, that's the how can I know something is going to happen? How can I know when a customer was created, a release was promoted, a support bundle was uploaded? Related to support bundles, let's talk a little bit more about what happens when something does go wrong and your customer sends you a support bundle. As Jeremy mentioned, we've been working on making support bundles even more useful for you. The first piece of this is the ability to do metadata enrichment around the bundle. So using the replicated SDK API, your application can actually now write structured content alongside the support bundle at collection time. That can include things like severity, environment, error type, ticket ID, customer notes, really any key value pair is supported. The way this works today is very similar to how you're able to post custom metrics and collect those. And you do that by posting them to the SDK. So similar post and patch method. So we do recommend posting or patching this metadata to the SDK API, where the info is stored in a secret and collected at support bundle generation time. But you can also pass the metadata as a flag on the CLI with a support bundle generation command, which is what Jeremy showed earlier in his talk. And so this enriched support bundle comes through to you replicated with all of that metadata attached. So this feature is already available, and this is the first phase of a broader effort to make bundles more triageable, searchable, and more automatable as part of your broader support process. On the vendor portal side, in the UI itself, you can now browse Kubernetes events, pod statuses, container logs, resources inventory directly in the support bundle detail page without having to download the bundle. This is something we really wanted to bring as a first triage point. Many vendors will still use the SB Cuddle tool to really go deep in the troubleshooting, interacting with the bundle like it's a cluster. But now this new improved support bundle user interface and vendor portal puts a lot more info at your fingertips, allowing you to quickly scan and quickly troubleshoot without having to necessarily immediately download the bundle. So we've also made it easier that when you're viewing specific instance details and click view support bundles, that will now better pre-filter to that instance's specific context rather than before where we showed you all the bundles across all the instances. So bringing more of that instance specific context in when we're troubleshooting a specific instance. And then thinking about the whole workflow overall, this is where this really comes together as a workflow. You instrument your application so that your customer can upload a support bundle directly. That bundle carries the structured metadata that you wrote to the SDK API. And with the work we have in progress, coming soon, that metadata will actually be not just included in the bundle that's uploaded, but it will actually be passed along with any support bundle related event notifications that you instrument as well. That means the metadata comes through in that webhook payload, which unlocks the ability to automate things like PagerDuty routing, Jira ticket creation, Slack alerts with real context. We're also building a new export API that'll give you easier programmatic access to the bundle data at scale. So that's whether you want to get a webhook notification that a customer has uploaded a support bundle and you want to immediately go extract that bundle back into your support tool of choice. So you have the information where your support engineering team's eyes are, or if you just want to do an ongoing batch pull of support bundles so that you can do a broader AI analysis. Maybe you want to pull the last every week's bundles or the last month's bundles, run some AI analysis on it to look for potential support process improvements or even product improvements on where things are commonly going wrong in some of your issues. So that webhook metadata coming through on the event notifications, as well as that export API, are both actively in development and should be actually available within this next week, if not two. The other thing I wanted to touch on is some of the improvements we've made to Security Center around improved CVE visibility. The Security Center has been available in alpha since last quarter, and we've been continuing to iterate on it based on your feedback. Based on your feedback on the vendor side, we've recently added real-time image scanning status, as well as the ability to actually kick off and retry a scan if for some reason the image scan has failed. You can more easily find source information for vulnerable images, allowing you to more quickly triage, okay, exactly where in my application is this vulnerable image referenced so that you can take action on it, as well as you can now click down and see the full gripe JSON output that the secure build image scanner is actually putting out directly in the vendor portal. On the in-customer facing side, where we show security information with an enterprise portal, some improvements there are that we now display the CVE information as a comparison between the customer's current version that they're running and the latest available version to them based on their license and channel. So the goal there is to really make it clear to your end customer what version of CVE was fixed on, and more specifically to encourage them to actually upgrade your application version so that they get the benefit of those CVE fixes as well as your latest and greatest features. There's a few things worth calling out in the replicated SDK and CLI as well. The SDK now supports HA mode, including multiple replicas, pod anti-infinity, pod distribution budget. This is super important if your application relies heavily on the SDK API. We have vendors that will shut down the application if the license isn't valid. So they really rely on that replicated SDK API being available. And it also drives the Security Center CVE images reporting to help you understand what images and versions your customers are actually running in their environment currently and which of those are subject to security risk. And that newly available mode to run the SDK and HA is really helpful there. We also added an option to be able to disable the default enterprise secret for end customers, just in case they're in a situation where they want to manage their own image pull secrets and can't create secrets in clusters. And then on the CLI side, a couple of quality of life improvements. You can now more easily delete channels and dev customers via vendor API, which is really helpful for CI-based testing cleanup if you spin up a bunch of test customers, a bunch of channels as part of your CI testing process. And also the required flags now available on release create with promote, which was previously only available on the promote command. So this is if you know that you're going to want this release to be a required step version before your customer can upgrade. Before it was a two-step process, create the release, then go promote it with required. Now you can do that all in one command. And then I also wanted to highlight a few enterprise portal improvements that have shipped in the last quarter. Auto invite on customer creation, that second screenshot on the slide there, that's a new feature, literally just went out yesterday. It lets you opt into sending out an enterprise portal invite automatically when you create a customer, removing that manual gap in the onboarding flow. So if you have enterprise portal on for all of your customers, you can choose to toggle this on. And essentially what happens is anytime you create a customer, instead of having to manually go in the enterprise portal access in the vendor portal UI and turn that on, now if you enable this, as soon as you create that customer successfully, they will automatically be invited to their enterprise portal. So a way to more programmatically drive that customer lifecycle workflow. We also have more email status visibility, so you can see when you do send those invites, those trial access signups, and other emails that Enterprise Portal enables, you can now more clearly see sent, delivered, bounce status, and better understand if your customers actually got that email, if there was a bounce for some reason, so that you can follow up. And then we're continuing to make improvements around how we show install tracking data. So one of the first things we've done is just to better distinguish that setup progress and things that we absolutely know this happened on this day timestamp versus that sort of secondary instant status, which can sometimes be delayed even for online or unavailable in air gap environments. With air gap overall, we're also working on making more improvements around air gap visibility. We're exploring some interesting solutions there, so stay tuned for more information there. So that's a lot of what has shipped recently in this last quarter that I feel there's been a lot more than that, but these are the key highlights that I really wanted to make sure you all knew about as our vendor partners. So now that I've talked about what's shipped, let's talk about what's coming soon and next. So I mentioned Enterprise Portal. We made some small improvements, but we're actually making some much larger improvements that are in progress overall. So I wanted to talk a little bit about those as to what's coming next. Today, customizing install instructions in Enterprise Portal means editing the MDX directly in the vendor portal UI, one channel at a time. And that works really well when you're getting started, but as your content continues to grow across many versions, it becomes harder to manage, harder to version, harder to collaborate on. We are improving that model by moving the content authoring to a more of a Git-based model. So in this future management of Enterprise Portal, you would link a content repository, organize your pages with a simple table of contents YAML structure, and you get version history, branching, pull request, and team collaboration all as part of that process. So the content syncs in near real time, and your portal content follows the same review and approval workflow that your engineers are already using for the release code. The other major piece of this new system or improved system of Enterprise Portal will be the conditional content visibility. So you can define even more rules to show different content based on customer type, channel entitlements, or specific license field values. One content source, many tailored experiences essentially. And for vendors that have complex deployment profiles where every customer needs their own unique configuration or operational docs, this will be able to open up that idea of per customer content delivery directly through the portal. So this screenshot shows a little bit of a sneak peek of where the newer vendor controls look like with these improvements, and we'll be sharing out a lot more of this as it gets closer to getting folks hands-on with it. I also want to talk about more of your customer's experience side of the Enterprise Portal. So as you are curating the Enterprise Portal experience, one of the biggest pain points today is that the only way to see what your customer is going to see with these conditional variables for the content was to push the changes live and basically set up a test customer and pretend to be that customer. That meant you were pushing everything live, which meant every iteration was visible to end customers. So as part of this sort of next generation of Enterprise Portal improvement work, we're building a full preview mode in the vendor portal where you can select a content branch, you can select the specific customer context and see exactly what that customer would see before anything goes live. We're also expanding what the Enterprise Portal can help you distribute to your customers alongside your application. So we are starting with Terraform modules with entitlement gated access. And from there, we are exploring additional artifact types like Argo, CloudFormation, et cetera. Our goal is for Enterprise Portal to be the single destination for everything your customer needs. So none of this changes the out-of-the-box experience. Enterprise Portal will continue to work today without any Git setup. Linking the content repo is basically how you unlock advanced mode. So it's that deeper customization layer when you're ready for it. It's an opt-in progression. It's not a prerequisite. I like to explain the concept when we're talking about it internally. An out-of-the-box, ready-to-go experience with a set of recommended components. Those are the components that you're already very familiar with in Enterprise Portal today. But when you're ready to go deeper on that customization, you can remove components that you don't want. You can add them. You can change the content in those components and more. So a lot more customizable. This is just a really simple example of screenshot from one example Enterprise Portal that we have running with this next generation Enterprise Portal. So the updated design model that's a little bit more docs format style, it just better handles vendors wanting to add, remove, modify all these various components. You have some branding controls now, but with this new model, we're also introducing the concept of a theme.yaml. And with that theme.yaml, you have even more control over that branding. You can put in custom CSS. So really have a lot more control over the look and feel in advanced mode of what your Enterprise Portal unboxing experience for access to your software really looks like. So looking more broadly at the platform overall, There's a lot of capabilities that are coming up within the next quarter. We're pushing embedded cluster version 3 to GA. Alex has an upcoming talk at this event, so stay tuned for Alex's upcoming talk for a deep dive. We recently open sourced our secure build project, and we're working to move the replicated SDK and the embedded cluster to secure build based images for a zero CVE security posture. We're continuing on event notifications based on your feedback. We are looking to improve the usability of customer and instance data, particularly for those vendor partners that are already operating at high scale and have dozens, if not hundreds of customers. And we're continuing to expand Security Center to answer some of the more customer-centric questions that you all are looking for, like being able to more easily identify not just which release has CVEs in it, but which of your customers are currently running instances that have a very specific critical CVE that you need to follow up on. So all things that you'll be hearing more information on from us in the next couple of months. So again, this quarter, to recap, we were very focused on giving you more visibility, more control across the full life cycle for how you monitor your customer instances, to how you handle support, to how you deliver software through the enterprise portal. And that's going to keep accelerating. As Grant mentioned, we have adopted AI as well. And so it's now enabling us to help deliver what you're asking for even faster than before. So I'm really excited to keep being able to share with you all the things that we're building. And I want to thank you for joining. If anything we covered today is relevant to what you're working on, talk to your account exec or just reach out to me directly in Slack. As I've probably mentioned in emails and other forms of communications, we very much love your feedback. It does directly shape what we build next. All right, thank you.
Wow, Amber, that was incredible. You all have been so busy since the last Replicon. That was so many updates. I have a very quick question and also opening up the floor. Feel free to post your questions in the chat if you have them. That was dozens of new small features I feel like you just went through. What is your personal vision for how you hope this recent batch of upgrades like helps transform our customer experience?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's a few things that we're seeing that we're trying to be strong partners to our vendors on. I mean, one is everyone is trying to figure out how to do more with less isn't the right phrasing here, but it does feel like the right words, right? Where everybody's going a bit faster with a few less people, right? The enterprise's standards are higher than ever as far as security and requirements and processes. And we're trying to figure out how we can remove as much of that manual process where it's not needed. As Jeremy touched on his talk, look how many ways just integrating the AI started streamlining how many personas that didn't do different things had to be involved, and how much more quickly the support engineering remediation process goes now with that like faster feedback loop. So how can we enable folks to do that? How can we, a lot of our customers are operating at scale. They have Salesforce, they have Zendesk, they have all of these other systems. And so how do we make sure that Replicated is an easily integratable component within all those systems that where you can easily get the information back to data analysis or support systems or whatever you need versus assuming you'll always operate within the vendor portal platform. So that sort of enablement of scale, enablement of automation has been driving a lot of our work, and I think will continue to be, as well as we're exploring things like what Jeremy showed. Is that something we can help potentially offer to enable more AI analysis of the support bundles? So certainly leaning into some of those innovations as well. Again, all with the idea of like, how can we help you remediate faster, ship faster, make your customers happier?